Absolutely, here is a complete part 1 only, written as a cinematic daytime emotional story with a strong hook, suspense, kindness, and a powerful ending. You're just a waitress. Eat with the staff, the billionaire's wife snapped, then the CEO stood up. The entire restaurant went silent when the billionaire's wife pointed across the table and said, "You're just a waitress, eat with the staff." Nobody expected what happened next. The young waitress lowered her eyes, trying desperately to hide the tears gathering in them. She had heard cruel words before, but never in a room where she had spent the entire morning serving people with a smile. Then, slowly, the CEO pushed his chair away from the table, stood up in front of everyone, and looked at his wife with an expression that made the entire room hold its breath. What he said next would change not only the waitress's life, but the way everyone in that restaurant understood kindness. Before we continue, if you believe that kindness matters, that people deserve second chances, and that someone's job never determines their worth, please take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who needs a little hope today, leave a comment, and subscribe to Epic Story Hub. Sometimes one small act of kindness can change a person's entire life. It was a bright Tuesday afternoon in downtown Chicago, and sunlight poured through the enormous glass windows of the elegant Belmont Grand Restaurant, turning the polished tables into mirrors of gold. Among the expensive suits, designer dresses, and quiet conversations sat 26-year-old Mara Ellison, a waitress who had been working there for almost 3 years. Mara was not famous, wealthy, or important in the eyes of the rich customers she served. She rented a tiny apartment above an old bakery, drove a 12-year-old car that sometimes refused to start, and kept a photograph of her late mother beside her bed. Yet Mara had something money could never buy. She had a gentle heart. Every morning before her shift, she packed an extra sandwich in her lunch bag because there was an elderly homeless man who often sat near the restaurant entrance. His name was Walter, and even when Mara was struggling herself, she never walked past him without sharing something. That afternoon, the restaurant was preparing for one of the biggest business lunches of the year. The CEO of the powerful Westbridge Corporation, Adrian Vale, had reserved the private dining room for an important meeting. Adrian was known throughout the city as a ruthless businessman who had built his company from a small office into a billion-dollar empire. Newspapers often described him as cold, calculating, and nearly impossible to impress. Sitting beside him was his wife, Celeste Vale, a woman known for her expensive jewelry, perfect appearance, and sharp tongue. Mara had been assigned to their table because the restaurant manager believed she was the most professional waitress on the staff. From the moment Celeste arrived, Mara sensed trouble. Celeste complained about the flowers, the temperature, the tablecloth, and even the way Mara placed a glass of water beside her. Mara apologized each time without arguing. She had learned that sometimes keeping your dignity meant refusing to fight with someone who had already decided to misunderstand you. During the meal, Adrian barely spoke. He seemed distracted, repeatedly looking through documents while Mara quietly served their food. Then something unexpected happened. One of the restaurant's younger servers accidentally dropped a tray near the private dining room. A glass shattered across the floor, and several guests turned around. The young server froze in fear because he knew the manager would be furious. Mara immediately stepped forward, told him not to worry, and helped clean the broken glass. She knew exactly how humiliating it felt to make a mistake in front of wealthy customers. When she returned to the table, Celeste stared at her as though Mara had committed some unforgivable offense. Later, during a short break, Mara sat in the staff dining area with the same lunch she had brought from home. It was nothing special, just a small container of rice, vegetables, and chicken she had cooked the night before. She had barely taken 2 bites when the restaurant manager rushed in and told her that the VIP guests needed something from the kitchen. Mara immediately stood and returned to work. Hours passed. The business meeting ended, but Adrian and Celeste remained for a private lunch. The restaurant manager had arranged a special meal for them, and the kitchen staff had prepared more food than they could possibly eat. When Mara came to clear the table, she noticed several untouched plates filled with expensive food. She quietly asked if the remaining meals could be sent to the staff kitchen rather than thrown away. The manager agreed. But Celeste heard her. She looked at Mara with disbelief and asked whether she had actually requested the leftover food for the staff. Mara calmly explained that the kitchen employees had been working since early morning and many had not taken a proper break. Celeste laughed under her breath and said that people should know their place. Mara tried to ignore the comment. She turned to leave, but Celeste's voice stopped her. In front of the restaurant manager, several employees, and a few customers, Celeste said that Mara had become far too comfortable around important people. Then came the sentence that would break the silence of the entire room. "You're just a waitress, eat with the staff." Mara stood completely still. Her fingers tightened around the tray in her hands. She could feel dozens of eyes watching her. For a second, she wanted to disappear. She thought about her mother, who had always told her that honest work was never something to be ashamed of. She swallowed the pain in her throat and quietly apologized, even though she had done nothing wrong. Then a chair scraped against the floor. Adrian Vale stood up. The movement was so sudden that Celeste stopped smiling. Adrian slowly looked around the room before turning toward Mara. His expression was no longer distant or distracted. There was something deeply serious in his eyes. He asked Mara to sit down. She thought she had misunderstood him, but Adrian repeated himself. He told the manager to bring another chair to the table. The manager hesitated, unsure whether he was hearing correctly. Adrian then looked directly at his wife and said that if Mara was just a waitress, then he was just a man who happened to own a company. He reminded Celeste that titles, money, and expensive clothes were temporary, but the way a person treated those with less power revealed who they truly were. Celeste became furious and accused him of embarrassing her in front of everyone. Adrian did not raise his voice. Instead, he calmly asked her whether she knew what Mara had done that morning. Nobody answered. Adrian explained that he had arrived early for the meeting and had watched Mara from across the restaurant. He had seen her quietly give breakfast to Walter, the homeless man outside. He had also noticed her paying for a meal for an elderly customer who had accidentally left his wallet at home. Most importantly, Adrian had received a call from his assistant that morning telling him about an anonymous donation made to a community food program. The donor had refused to give a name. Adrian looked at Mara and asked whether she had made that donation. Mara's eyes widened. She admitted that she had donated what little savings she could afford because the food program had helped her mother years earlier when she was sick. She had never told anyone because she believed kindness was not supposed to be performed for applause. The room fell silent. Adrian finally revealed why the story mattered to him. Years earlier, before he became wealthy, his own father had lost everything. Adrian had worked nights washing dishes while attending college during the day. There had been a restaurant owner who quietly gave him free meals whenever he couldn't afford food. That stranger had once told him that a person's circumstances could change overnight, so he should never judge someone by where they were standing today. Adrian said he had spent 20 years remembering those words. Then he turned toward the manager and asked how much Mara earned. The manager nervously answered. Adrian immediately offered Mara a position at Westbridge Corporation, not as a servant, not as a charity case, but as a community outreach coordinator because he had learned that she had been taking evening classes in social work and had dreams of helping struggling families. Mara could barely speak. She explained that she could not accept something simply because Adrian felt sorry for her. Adrian smiled for the first time that day and told her he wasn't offering pity. He was offering an opportunity because she had already demonstrated qualities his company desperately needed: compassion, responsibility, courage, and integrity. Celeste stood quietly beside him. The anger had disappeared from her face, replaced by embarrassment. She looked at Mara and finally apologized. It was not a perfect apology, and it could not erase the humiliation she had caused, but Mara accepted it anyway. She told Celeste that everyone makes mistakes and that what matters is whether we are willing to change after making them. Those words affected Celeste more deeply than any argument could have. A few weeks later, Mara began her new job. She helped create a program providing meals and temporary employment opportunities for people struggling to rebuild their lives. Adrian personally supported the project, and the restaurant where Mara had once worked became one of the program's first partners. One bright afternoon, Mara returned to Belmont Grand Restaurant wearing a simple professional suit. The same dining room looked completely different to her now. She passed the table where she had once stood holding back tears. This time, she was not carrying a tray. She was carrying a folder containing plans for a community program that would feed hundreds of families. Near the entrance, she saw Walter sitting in the sunlight. But this time, he wasn't homeless. Mara had helped him secure temporary housing through the new program, and he had recently started working part-time as a groundskeeper at one of Westbridge's community centers. When he saw Mara, his face lit up with pride. Mara sat beside him and shared a sandwich, just like she had done hundreds of times before. The world around them was busy. Cars moved through the city. People hurried along the sidewalks. Wealthy customers entered the restaurant. Nobody stopped to notice two people sharing a simple lunch in the afternoon sunlight. But Mara noticed. She understood something she would never forget. Kindness had not made her rich. Kindness had made her stronger. And the woman who had once told her she was just a waitress had unknowingly helped reveal the truth that mattered most. A person's worth has never been measured by their job, their clothes, their bank account, or the table where they are allowed to sit. It is measured by what they do when nobody is watching. If this story touched your heart, please like the video, share it with someone who believes that kindness still matters, and subscribe to Epic Story Hub for more emotional stories about hope, courage, and second chances. And before the story ends, I want you to do something special. Comment, "Kindness has no status," if you believe every human being deserves dignity and respect, no matter where they come from or what job they do. Because sometimes, the person everyone looks down on is the very person who teaches the world how to stand tall. If you'd like, I can also create a YouTube SEO description, 15 keywords, and 15 hashtags specifically matched to this story.